Hello everyone, welcome back to another Guild Wars 2 video. This time it's not a build video. I don't want to talk about any new build that I have, but I just want to talk about kind of a concept, because the last build that I posted was kind of more popular than some of my other builds, and it was my Berserker build, my Skull Grinder Berserker build. And one thing I was really thinking about, and one thing I've been thinking about for a long time with Guild Wars 2 is the meta required? You know, when the game first came out, there wasn't really a meta for a long time, and the reason for that is that there didn't need to be a meta. There was no requirement for a meta because the stuff just wasn't challenging enough. And so basically you could just run whatever you wanted and you'd be fine. And so we had so many things, and that is why, for example, something that a lot of warriors liked, it was the Great Sword Longbow warrior. That's why that was popular, and that's why Rifle Warrior was used, and you know, that's why all of these things that we wouldn't even consider playable today, that's why they were used, because there was not really a need for a meta. But now that we have content like raids, like high-level fractals, like fractal challenge modes, you know, what are we meant to do? Are we meant to still be able to play whatever we want, or are we meant to have to conform to a meta? And so now I'm gonna take you inside. I'm gonna take you to my bank account. This is the one time that I will say that when I'm on Guild Wars 2. But with Berserker, for example, there is in PvE pretty much one meta, one single meta build, and that's it. And basically, if you're not running it, then people will be upset with you. Okay, and now I actually don't have this meta fully fleshed out, but basically it's all Viper's gear, and I don't have the trinkets for Vipers, so I'm not going to even show you that. But it's all Viper's gear with Runes of the Renegade. You're using Sword Torch, and your traits are, you know, middle, and then your for Berserker, and then for arms it's like top, bottom, and I think burst precision. I don't remember. And then you're also running tactics for empower allies and whatnot. That is the only meta build in PvE for Berserker, and even for Spellbreaker. Actually, Quantify actually has a Spellbreaker meta build, which is really cool. It actually is not considered meta, but it is considered to be effective for two bosses, Veil Guardian, Keep Construct. And so in Guild Wars 1, this was not really too much of a problem. You could still sort of play the way that you wanted and still be able to complete things. And the reason why is that there were so many skills and so many different possible builds that there were so many things that could be considered meta builds. I was talking to my friend Janelle about this recently, and actually it was kind of a while ago. And that is what she said, that there was so many different meta builds. So basically you could have a build based around one elite skill, whatever kind of elite skill that you had, and there would be a build that was considered meta that would be very effective against whatever content that you wanted to do. But in Guild Wars 2, that's very different, isn't it? You gotta make sure you've got the right stat sets, and you gotta make sure you got the right runes and sigils and skills and traits, and it's all very important. And if you don't get that right, then will you really be considered ineffective? Well, I say no. I say that there are some builds that are definitely ineffective, definitely wrong. For example, you want to make sure that your traits, you want to make sure that your traits synergize with what your skills are. So, for example, if you've got Heat the Soul, and it reduces the recharge of torch skills, and gives you extra condition damage while wielding a torch, you don't want to run Mace, you know, you want to run something else, like you want to run Blood Reaction, or possibly Dead or Alive. If you are running, Might makes right, you want to have some kind of source of might in your build. If you're running dual wielding, you don't want to have Mace Torch. It just doesn't make sense. Okay, that would be a bad build decision. Okay, another thing, Blade Master. If you want to run Blade Master, which increases the damage of conditions inflicted by a sword and reduces recharge of sword skills, don't go without a sword. It's just that simple. So those are some things you want to keep in mind. You want to keep in mind that you want your stuff to synergize. I mean, I've got the Rune of Balthazar, which increases my burning duration and condition damage. That means that I want to have a build that has conditions, particularly burning. And so, if you don't have that, then yeah, that's going to be a bad build decision. Another thing is, if you've got a bunch of stats, like I've got a gear set that has condition damage in it, I want to make sure I'm being able to utilize that. I want to put conditions in my build. I don't want to have it be all just power skills. You know, you don't go into a Berserker condition build with a greatsword, and there's a reason for that, because none of the greatsword skills inflict any conditions except for Blade Trail, which inflicts cripple, and that's not inflicted by condition damage. So it's just beyond that. I do not think that meta is required. I do not think that. I think you can use Spellbreaker to go in raids. In fact, I think you could go in a raid with 10 warriors, and I think you could easily make that work. I made a video a while ago about can all 5 warriors do tier 4 fractals, and I still absolutely believe that is true. It might some content be difficult? Yes, some content is going to be difficult. And what is the meta for? The meta is really, it's not the only effective build. The meta is not the only effective thing that you can do and still complete the content. The meta is the build that allows for the most room for mistakes. The meta is the build that allows the most room for mistakes. You can make a mistake when you're playing Sword Torch Berserker. You can make a mistake and you will still be doing okay. If you are playing full glass, full assassins, dagger Spellbreaker, you know, you've got, let's say you've got Spellbreaker and you've got the Pure Strike, you've got Sun and Moon Style, or perhaps you have Loss Aversion instead, because that's not defensive. And then let's say you've got Mage Bane Tether. If you've got that kind of build and you make a mistake, you might not survive, right? So you want to be careful about the things that you're using. You want to be careful about your rotation, and you want to be careful about the reaction time that you have to certain things. Making sure that you're using your stun breaks properly. You want to make sure of that. And so that's really what the meta is for. Okay, so you know, I'm kind of sick and tired of the meta being pushed and pushed and pushed like it is the only viable build. You know, if the meta was the only viable build, then why would they let us choose builds? You know, there's got to be some kind of choice, and I understand that in many situations the meta is the most effective. But the problem with the idea of the meta is that some people will come into a class not knowing how to play the class, and they'll just choose the meta build, and and they won't be very effective with it just because they don't know the class. They don't know the rotation well enough. They don't know the mechanics of the class. They don't know why things synergize. They just don't understand. If I went into a Mesmer and picked the Chronomancer meta, I wouldn't be able to play it at all because I haven't practiced at all with a Chronomancer. And I don't know the Chronomancer as a class. I don't know it. And so that is what would prevent me from playing the class well. I can't criticize the build. I can only criticize myself because I haven't done it enough. I haven't played the meta. Or I haven't played the class. And so there are also people that do that with Warrior, or particularly lately in PvP with Spellbreaker. Now for a little while Spellbreaker was a little face roll easy in PvP. But you really need to know how the traits synergize, and you need to know what you want to take for certain situations. If you're going into a Zerg, you definitely want to take Enchantment Collapse, and definitely the Winds of Disenchantment, right? If you're going just solo, you probably don't want to take Enchantment Collapse. You probably want to take Magebane Tether, or perhaps Revenge Counter. And so, I don't know. My point is that the meta build is going to be an effective build. There are a couple of meta builds sometimes for certain classes. It's going to be an effective build, but it is not the only effective build. This Skullgrinder Berserker, you could use this, and you probably could use it in tier 4 fractals as well, especially if you take the Banner of Discipline. Then you got some group support as well. If you don't take the Banner of Discipline, it doesn't even matter. Like, I'm just I'm just going into the build mechanics now. But you could probably do tier 4 fractals with this, and I say this coming from a Spellbreaker that has done tier 4 fractals before. Coming from a Dolyak Spellbreaker, which is here with the Soldier's Gear. My Dolyak Spellbreaker has done tier 4 fractals. It is possible. All of that is possible. And so just when you're coming to whether or not you want to play a class, and if you don't have any fun playing the meta build, that doesn't mean that the class is not for you. I cannot stand playing Sword Torch Berserker. I can't stand it. I hate it. But that doesn't mean Warrior is not for me. Warrior is my favorite class to play, and it's the only class I play, right? So, just because you don't enjoy playing the meta, that doesn't mean that you're not going to enjoy playing the class. Just play with the class. Learn about the class. Try to come up with your own builds for the class. Think about what synergizes. What do you want out of the build? And do you want this to be a power build? If you want this to be a power build, what or for example, is this going to be a power and support build, or just a DPS build? And if it's just going to be a DPS build, then you've only got a few options, okay? Are you going to have basically berserkers or assassins, or is there some other kind of mix of defense that you want to put in? Do you want knights for power, precision, toughness, or do you want cavaliers for power, toughness, ferocity? If it's going to be a support build, do you want harriers, which is power, healing, power, and concentration? Do you want minstrels, which is toughness, vitality, healing, power, and concentration? Do you want commanders, which is power, precision, toughness, and concentration, for that little bit of defense and a little bit of support? Think about what you want out of the build. Next, you got to pick your rune set. Okay, what is going to synergize the most with the skills that you have and what you want out of the build? That is what you need to think about. Don't just worry about what's meta, okay? When you go in to a raid or a fractal or whatever, look at the meta build for guidance. Use it as a guideline and say, okay, now don't just say, okay, they want me to choose this skill, this skill, and this skill. Say, okay, why do they want me to choose this skill? Why do they want me to use this food? Why? Is it because it reduces pressure against conditions? Is it because it augments the power of my skills? Is it because it increases my defense? Why is it that they want me to choose this particular thing? or gear or skill or whatever. Use it as a guideline. Do not use it as the be-all and end-all of builds, because metas change. And on February 6th, when the balance patch comes, there will probably be a new meta. Probably. So prepare for it. And I will probably be doing a video talking about the balance patch when that comes out. So be prepared for a new meta, and when those things change, adapt your build. Don't just say, oh, this build, this meta is completely useless now. Well, it might be, but just change your build. Use a different weapon, use a few different skills. Look at what they buffed. Use that stuff, right? Or if they didn't buff anything, just use something else. Obviously, what you were using was a little too powerful. They buffed something else that's probably just buffing counterplay to something else. So, that's really my point. It's just, to answer the question in the title, is meta required? Meta is not required. It's useful, but it is not required. So, do not get hung up on what the meta is. Have fun playing the game. Have fun playing your class, learn your class, and have fun playing the game. Okay? That's really the main thing behind it. In the end, this is the game. That being said, I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.